Fair tax is coming, don't stand in the way. Fair tax is coming across the USA. Fair tax is coming, clean up this mess. We got to get rid of the IRS. Hey, hey! Hey, hey!
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
And we are the
FAIRtax
FAIRtax Guys.
Guys.
And we have got a very special episode for you here today. Autry Pruitt, you probably don't recognize that name, but he is a member of the board of Americans For Fair Taxation, and shall we say, not exactly your stereotypical fair tax supporter.
No.
Ron, you've seen this guy, dealt with him a little more than I have. Set him up here.
Just a little bit. I've never met him, but I've listened to a couple of his programs. He has an online radio show that's quite successful. And he's not your typical Tea Party person, that's for sure. He's not a Tea Party person at all. But I would say that he was an equal opportunity criticizer, all right? If he finds something in the government he doesn't like, he lets people know about it. And obviously he's successful because his program is successful. So, and he's a strong fair tax supporter. As Bob said, he's on the board of directors for the Americans For Fair Taxation.
And he was kind enough to talk to us for almost an hour. So we're going to split this interview over like the next 3 episodes of Fair Tax Power Radio. And he has a lot good to say, especially to people who are not Tea Party people and are not the stereotypical fair tax supporters. And one of the things that the fair tax movement has been trying to do of recent is to reach out to the people who have just, because of their political persuasions, decided they didn't like it without even, considering what it is.
Yep, because we know that the fair tax will help all Americans, regardless of their political stripes or whatever organization they want to identify with. The fair tax will help all Americans. And so our job is to reach out to everybody we can. And I think Autry will help us with this.
I hope so. So let's get right with it. Here's our interview with Autry Pruitt. And we're talking today with Autry Pruitt, somebody you may or may not have heard of. He is a member of the board of Americans For Fair Taxation. That's the national grassroots organization supporting the fair tax. Autry, thank you so much for talking with us today.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
All right.
Glad to be on board.
All right. My pleasure. I'll tell you what, for people who don't recognize the name and don't know who Autry Pruitt is, talk a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, and talk a bit about your political leanings and your aspirations there.
Well, my name is Autry. As you said, I'm the owner-host of Autry Live, also yourrepublic.com. That's the letter U, the letter R, the word republic.com. We are some have described us as a sort of progressive libertarian organization. I would say we're just libertarian thought differently. In fact, that's our motto. Started just about 4 years ago. We are, in terms of our political spectrum, most people would classify us probably as more center, down the center, a little bit more of a left leaning, particularly when it comes to social issues. And even economically, we tend to be aware of the left philosophical stance in the aisle.
So,
and I've been doing it now for 4 years, hosting the show, and we have the website, and we have a magazine that just came out as well.
Okay, you wanted to tell people how to get a hold of that?
So you can go to the website, the letter U, the letter R, the word republic.com. And from that site, you can see the articles, you can see the magazine. You can email me at autry.tv. You can also go to autrylive.com. So there are tons of ways to get a hold of us. Or tweet me at AUTRY. And myself, for the social media expert, we have Lauren Tolan. She'll be more than happy to get you the information that's needed. And we have a lot of stuff coming out. We'll put you on the mailing list and get the stuff out to you as quick as we possibly can.
So it would be fair to say that you're not a Tea Partier.
That is absolutely correct. That is very fair to say.
Absolutely, because it seems that a lot of the support for the fair tax is coming from the right and not a whole lot from the center or the left. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think part of it's because of politics today. So one of the things I believe that's happening is that if one side supports something, then the other side is necessarily against it.
So it really doesn't matter what it is. If it's the other guy's idea, it's a bad one. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the case, and that's both for left and right. Another one is the optics. I think one of the issues that the progressive left has, I'm not saying this pejoratively, even though it may come across that way, is that a lot of it has to do about optics and diversity. And so right now, if you go to the FAIRtax website, if you look up a lot of FAIRtax pictures, it's usually middle class, upper middle class, older, I would say at least age 48 or above. Mostly those of European ancestry, individuals who support the FAIRtax. So and because of that, because of the optics there, that's another reason why people, I think, are hesitant to support that side. Another reason is a lot of it is the demagoguery that's occurred on the left concerning that it's going to raise your taxes, it's sales taxes, you won't get in. I mean, there's a lot of that going about, and that's because individuals such as Nancy Pelosi and a lot of the establishment Democrats in particular, and even establishment Republicans, those in the center, want to keep their power base, and a lot of their power base is surrounded by the income tax, or more importantly, the exceptions and the carve-outs and caveats that they can create from the income tax, and the sort of smoke and mirrors that the income tax creates.
Mm-hmm. There have been over a change a day running for the past 10 years, and nobody knows anything about it. It's a horribly corrupt system. It
is a horribly corrupt system, and I really believe fundamentally, and I don't get in discussions with individuals in FAIRtax, even though I know politically we disagree a lot, but I really fundamentally believe, myself as an African American, that the FAIRtax as currently proposed is just really a step forward and a way to go for both political philosophies, for those that are right-leaning, left-leaning, and those for in the center, and those for myself, such as libertarians. It really is the way to go. The cronyism that exists within the current income and corporate tax system is horrible. And it doesn't take much to see. And this is what amazes me with the progressive side of the aisle, or those that lean towards my way. They would rather sit and have the current system in place than to look at a new system. That should tell you something. We've had the same income tax system. The poor are still poor, still broke. No matter how many changes, no matter how many times you up, no matter what you do, people are still in the same situation. And that would necessitate to me that, you know what, it's time for us to try something new.
Yeah, that's a point that a lot of people just kind of conveniently ignore, don't they?
President Obama said it. President Obama said, when he was talking about health care, if you tried something for 50 years and it hasn't worked, then try something new. So I turn back to the president and say, well, let's look at our income tax system.
I would agree with him on that.
You know, you tried something for more than 50 years. And then people that come and say, well, the flat tax. The flat tax is an income tax. The original income tax system we had now, for all intents and purposes, was a flat tax system. If you look at the original legislation passed, where it affected just about 4 or 5% of the country, It was a flat tax system, way better than the flat taxes now that are being proposed.
Yeah, but it doesn't stay flat for long.
It won't stay flat. That's the biggest thing. Our chairman and president, Steve Hayes, says it all the time. I say it, you say it, everybody says it. Does anybody really believe that we're going to pass? Let's say the miracle occurs, Democrats and Republicans hold hands, and we all agree with a 10% flat tax. And we agree for a 10% flat tax on corporations. Do you really believe it's going to stay flat?
I mean, the ink won't be dry on it before the lobbyists will be descending on Congress again.
The ink's not even dry now. There are reports from a couple of, I don't have that many connections, but a few connections I have. People are already talking to Cruz and some other people who believe that may be a favorite to actually win the nomination and perhaps win the presidency. That lobbyists are already in their ears saying, well, you'll have to carve out a couple of things. We'll have to, this is the biggest teller. When Chris Christie came out and said, I want to do this flat tax. I want to redo the whole system, except I want to keep the mortgage interest deduction. Now, if we're honest with ourselves and we understand the mortgage interest deduction, we understand that the MID is one of the biggest middle class income entitlements built within the tax code.
And people, you hear talk about, well, the flat tax, we'll institute this flat tax and we'll get rid of the IRS. As long as you're taxing income at the federal level, somebody has to collect it. A flat tax will not get rid of the IRS, despite what some of the promises are you're hearing.
Yeah, it won't get rid of the... Listen, the flat tax will not get rid of the IRS. And there will be... There is no way, as it stands right now, even as it stands right now with the fair tax, we all know that we're going to have to fight tooth and nail to get it through with no amendments if possible, let alone the income tax, let alone this idea that you're going to have this flat tax across the board. You're still going to keep they say they're going to keep most people have said keep the mortgage interest deduction, keep the charitable deduction. There's no way you're going to keep only those two deductions. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Plus, everybody knows that a flat tax is going to disproportionately affect the poor. Everybody knows that. What are you going to do about small businesses? That's why the fair tax is realistic when you go to a Democrat or you go to anyone on the left and you show them the math and you say, listen, corporations don't pay taxes. I have this argument so many times with my friends on the left. Corporations do not pay taxes. They don't pay it. It all gets embedded either through jobs, either through a loss of benefits, a loss of jobs, or into consumer prices. Corporations don't pay taxes.
Yeah, they're treated just like any other cost of doing business, and they're passed on to their consumers, or they're passed on to their shareholders, or it's passed on to their employees.
And one of the things you're seeing with the current corporate high tax rate, you're seeing a lot of things that are occurring. One of the biggest things you're seeing is people are talking about a reduction in benefits. Oh, healthcare isn't supported. We came into this whole healthcare situation with President Obama and Obamacare, and I'm not trying to beat up anybody. If you're for healthcare for everybody, universal healthcare, hooray for you. I'm not going to beat up that. But look at how we got here. We got here because businesses and insurance were reducing the amount of what they were offering. And one of the reasons why they're reducing the amount of what they're offering is because of the burden that businesses, particularly the large corporations, carry. That's one of the reasons. And small businesses too, which are really the lifeblood of the economy.
All right, I want to focus a little bit on...
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No. Fine. See, you get me started, I can keep going. No, go ahead. Ask me whatever you want to.
I'm saying we kind of want to focus on some of the reasons that Democrats and centrists and libertarians that are not currently fair tax supporters, why they should support the fair tax. And I would guess at the top of that list would be progressivity. The Democrats and the people in the middle is always saying, you should not have a tax system that hurts the poor, and the rich are never paying their fair share. How does the fair tax fix that, and how can we get that message through to the people who are currently not receiving it?
Well, as a national consumption tax, the more you consume, then the more you pay. Basic sales tax. Those who make more money by far and large consume more and therefore will pay more. One of the things that's built into the fair tax is a prebate. The notion that, yes, rather than have exclusions, the authors of the fair tax came up with the idea and said, we can't get into this exception business again because that's what got us in the mess in the first place. So basically we're going to say, across the board, we're going to have an exemption, a prebate. So every month a family will get a check for the amount of taxes that they paid through this national consumption tax that they should not have paid. And so using that system, this is really great, by the way. Using that system, it is very possible that if you're poor, even if you're lower middle class, maybe even if you're middle class, less so middle class, but if you're lower middle class and poor, you could actually get away with really paying zero in taxes. Because not only do you get the prebate, but get this, and this is what I've said with the left can pick this up. you also have no taxes on used goods, which I think will bolster the environmentalists, those who are concerned about recyclables in the country. All of a sudden, if you're really poor and you shop at Goodwill, Salvation Army, or a used computer store, you get a used car, no taxes, no consumption taxes on those.
So you're saying the fair tax is the only plan out there that completely untaxes poor people, because the working poor people now are paying one of the most highly regressive taxes in the book, the payroll taxes for Medicare and Social Security.
Yeah, and so what's hurting, the reason why the left and the center don't get on, one is they don't understand it. It's the whole, I see some Tea Partiers in support of it. I see there's mostly older whites in support of it. That's the reason why they're not supporting it. That's the frontline reason, but they should support it.
But when they'll listen to you when they won't listen to those stereotypical fair tax supporters. When you get somebody's ear who's in the center or the left part of the political spectrum, what do you usually get from them? Can you usually reach them once they really understand what you're talking about?
Yes. Once I get them one-on-one or in a small group, like 3 or 4 people, and we have a back and forth, I can usually get them. Because usually the first thing is I can point to is I say, let's look at the current system. And everybody agrees that that's broken. Then when they say the consumption when I talk about going to consumption tax, they say, well, that disproportionately affects the poor. Then what I do is I talk about the prebate. Mm-hmm. And they say, oh, well, everybody gets a check. I say yes. Now, by the way, there's a little nugget in there I'm going to give you in a second. A little nugget. Some of my fair tax colleagues aren't going to be happy when I give you this little nugget. But there's a little nugget in there that I've given out to some Democrats before that I know on the Hill, in fact. So that's one. 2, the other thing I talk about is the improvement in the environment. The fact that individuals, in terms of the environment, are encouraged to buy used goods. I really believe the fair tax will cause a whole industry of resellers to rise up in business, reselling clothes, reselling shoes, because the fair tax has already been paid on those. So if you go buy used goods, it actually encourages you to buy used products.
So you can say this is something the climate change folks could get on board with.
Yeah, the environmentalists should be on board with this to say, hey, if you're really concerned about carbon emissions, if you're really concerned about all the stuff that takes to make these products and how we've become this consumer-based society and it's hurting the environment, get on board with the fair tax, because we actually encourage people in our tax plan to get used goods. So that's 2. Third, with regards to libertarians, what I tell libertarians, what I tell progressives are 2 different things. Now, with regards to libertarians, what I tell libertarians is real simple. Libertarians, you're trying to focus on how much the government is spending. You can't focus on how much the government is spending because all the time is spent on how we raise the money. All the time is spent on revenue collection, on income raising, on the 74,000 page of tax code. And nobody talks about the 1,000-page budget. No one talks about that. But all of a sudden, if you simplify the tax code to these 20 to 25 pages, with probably maybe another 10 pages of regulatory rule, all of a sudden you're going to notice national attention will shift from talking about revenue raising to talk about expenditures. Mm-hmm. So that's what I tell libertarians. If you really want to focus on expenditures, libertarians are also concerned about the government being overly involved in your documents, able to use the tax law to get around freedom of association or to get around any number of other restrictions that are on the government in the Bill of Rights. So what I tell libertarians is if you eliminate that end of the bargain, eliminate that income tax, then you have just literally chopped almost in half government's authority to get into your books, into your private life.
It does not make any sense at all that you have to share the intimate details of your personal finances. You have to tell the government more than you're comfortable telling your own kids, for crying out loud.
Exactly. I mean, and then for those who are concerned about cyber hacking, when I talk to people that are concerned, I say, hey, this is great for that too, because all of a sudden, overnight, your life can be away from the government. Now, is it a perfect libertarian solution? No. Is it a perfect progressive solution? No.
But it's a darn sight better than what we got.
It is a 99% leap over what we've got now.
Yeah.
And so the real solution, it's better for African Americans. When I talk to African American groups, I say it's better for African Americans because we're not changing anything on the spending side of the equation. Yes, do a lot of fair tax current supporters don't agree universal health care coverage and Obamacare. A lot don't agree with certain social welfare programs or the SNAP benefit food program, but the fair tax touches none of that. The fair tax simply changes how we collect the money. And if anything, if you really study The Economist and read about it, anything from the Democrats, they actually predict that in a decade's time, we'll actually raise even more money. And you'll probably be able to help the poor more. Now, I know that's disconcerting to some of the Tea Party advocates. There are reasons. And the tax code is used to conquer and divide, and it's eating everybody alive. It doesn't matter the race. It's eating everybody alive.
And there's part one of our interview with Autry Pruitt. And I should note right here quickly that interview was done over the phone. So the audio quality isn't quite up to what we're used to seeing here on FairTax Power Radio. And dropout's not a whole lot I can do about it. But he had some really good content and some really good ideas, especially right there at the end.
The end of it was amazing. That's one of the best quotes I've ever heard about the fair tax. The tax code is used to conquer and divide, and it's eating everybody alive. That's a great way to put it because it's very accurate. It's very accurate. Our friends in Washington use this tax code to control people, and that's one of the hurdles that we have is overcoming the status quo. The politicians that like the current system and play it like a fiddle.
Yeah, because you have to realize the tax code, the tax system that we have now is exactly what the political class wants us to have because they're in control of it. They could make it say anything they want to, and they've given us 75,000 plus pages of stuff that nobody understands, most of which are favors bought and paid for by some kind of lobbyist somewhere, and we just need to get rid of the whole thing.
Yeah. Going back to the very beginning when he was talking about polarized politics, that was very good. The optics when he talked about the fact that if you look at the supporters of the fair tax, basically you get a lot of old white guys like the FAIRtax Guys.
Yeah, like us. Oh, well. Guilty.
And establishment Republicans on both sides of the aisle. It's not just one or the other. It's the establishment, the people who are dug in to the Washington politics. Those are the people we're going to have to move and get out of their little habits. And he's very passionate about this. And the same for his own radio show at Autry Live.
You've listened to that show a time or two, I understand.
I have, like I said, he is an equal opportunity criticizer. If he finds something in the government or wherever that he doesn't like, he lets them have it one way or another. And the other thing is because of his show, he is a small businessman. He knows what it's like to run a business and to keep cash flow. And, for other business people, the current income tax is a huge burden. Not just the tax, but the compliance costs. Bob and I have talked about this many times. The compliance costs are very often greater than the actual tax itself. And it adds to the cost of doing business.
And it all gets passed right on down the line to the consumer.
Yeah, exactly. He had a great point about environmentalists probably will like the fair tax because of its treatment of used products. As we've said before, used products are not taxed under the fair tax. Under the fair tax, an item will only be subject to the fair tax once when it's brand new, when the consumer pays for it the first time. A used car, after that, when the consumer passes it off to somebody, sells it to somebody else, no fair tax. No fair tax on the used items. And therefore, it will enhance the efforts of the environmentalists to to encourage people to, reuse and recycle and so forth.
Yeah, I had known about the no tax on used items, but I hadn't really thought of that other angle before
That's
until
right.
Autry brought it up.
Yep, that's right. I didn't either. That's a very creative angle. And so for that reason, the environmentalists should be very attracted to the fair tax because of its treatment of used products. It's a very important idea.
All right, and as we always do here on FAIRtax Power Radio, if you're listening to us for the first time and you want to know how to get involved, there are several things that you can do, and you have to realize that it is going to take this grassroots movement. The politicians are not going to give us the fair tax just because we say pretty please.
Yeah.
We have got to actually put the nose to the grindstone, use a little elbow grease, and make this happen.
Yep. The first thing, if you have any questions or you want to get any information for us, any printouts that we have, email us at thefairtaxguys@gmail.com. thefairtaxguys@gmail.com, and we will be glad to answer and help you out in any way we can. We also strongly recommend that you go to fairtax.org and become a member, or at least sign up for the periodic emails. They send one out every Friday that they call the FairTax Friday, and it's full of good information, what's going on. So join fairtax.org, or at least sign up for their emails.
And come see us on Facebook.
Yep, we have a Facebook page. Just go to Facebook and look for the FAIRtax Guys, and you'll see our smiling faces there. I try to post something there just about every day, to keep the Facebook page going. And the social media is very important. We're trying to reach out to a lot of people. You'll find the FairTax, the national organization, the state organizations have Facebook pages and so forth. And also they have a presence on Twitter. So go to Facebook and join, share our posts, like our page, and help distribute the word to your friends on Facebook. It's very important.
And if you want to speak directly to your politicians, your senators, and your congressional representative, POPVOX, popvox.com.
Yeah, great website. Just as Bob says, you can go to PopVox. They'll ask you for your name and address, to join, because with your address, they know what congressional district you're in. Therefore, they know who your representative is, and they know who your state senators are. And when you make a comment, not just about fair tax, obviously we want you to go in and chime in on fair tax. Any pending legislation is on PopVox, and you can make a comment about it. Your comments go directly to your representative and your two senators, and they will respond to you.
Yeah, remember when we were talking with Ted Yoho, he says the representatives and senators themselves are usually so tied up with stuff that they don't have a whole lot of contact there, but every last one of them has staffers whose sole purpose is to monitor social media.
That's
and
right.
Take the pulse of their constituents and see what we're thinking.
And PopVox has a lot of tools to let them know how legislation is faring in their district. It lets them know. So PopVox is a great way to contact your legislator. Also, use the phone. All right, call them up, look them up on the internet, and see what their local or their DC phone number is. Call them up, say, I like this legislation, and I want my representative to co-sponsor it.
All right, we're getting pretty tight on time here, but one more time, hit that webinar thing.
Oh, the webinar, usually the fourth Thursday of every month. Go to fairtax.org, look for information there. You have to register for it. And I've been told that they're going to make registration for it a lot easier than it has been. But the webinar is live at your computer. You interact with the webinar hosts live, and they do a good job of presenting the fair tax, and then they'll have a special topic also.
Okay, and that's about it for this edition of FairTax Power Radio. I remind you please to stay tuned for parts 2 and part 3 of our Autry Pruitt interview coming up here on FairTax Power Radio. Until we begin, I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
Reminding you the fair tax, once you understand it,
you'll demand it.